Hey people. I met my husband during our time at university, where we were both studying psychology. Our initial connection was purely academic. We were often paired together for projects and study groups. Over time, our shared interests led to a friendship that saw us spend much of our free time together. We would hang out after classes, explore campus spots, discuss our coursework, and share our thoughts on various psychological theories. This routine went on for the better part of our university years. As we entered our final year, our relationship evolved. We both realized that our feelings had grown deeper, and we fell in love. This romantic connection brought a lot of happiness into our lives, making our bond even stronger. We finished the final year of university while balancing our academics with our relationship. After graduating, we dated for 2 more years, carefully considering our future together. By then, we were certain that we wanted to spend our lives together, so we decided to marry. My family situation was somewhat complex. My parents had divorced years ago, and my mother had passed away a few years before I met my husband. I only had my father, who, despite the past, was supportive and happy for us. My husband's family was different. He had been raised by a single mother who had devoted her life to him. She was also supportive of our decision to marry, understanding how much we cared for each other. Our wedding was a simple affair. Only our closest friends and family attended the ceremony. It wasn't as grand as our friends expected it to be, but it was perfect for us. Before we got married, we discussed living arrangements, specifically regarding my husband's mother. Having raised him without any support, he felt a strong sense of duty to take care of her, especially now that he was earning and she was getting older. I agreed to this arrangement. There was nothing for me to say no to. I understood where he came from and respected his dedication to his mother. After our wedding, we moved into the house owned by my mother-in-law. She had lived there for many years, and it made sense for us to join her rather than to find a new place. Living with her turned out to be easier than I had initially expected. She was an independent woman who largely kept to herself. She rarely needed my help. She'd go out of our way to cook for us, and it felt like a small, little happy family. She and I mostly spoke during our evening tea sessions in the backyard. We spoke about my work, her work back in the days, and even her dating life. I thought I found myself a new friend. She wasn't in my way, and I appreciated the balance we managed to strike in our living arrangements. How wrong I was. My husband and I enjoyed our Saturday date nights, which had become a tradition for us. Whether it was stepping out for drinks, partying with friends, or simply grabbing dinner by ourselves, these evenings were a special time for us to reconnect. One week, however, our plans were interrupted when my mother-in-law mentioned she wasn't feeling well. Out of concern, we decided to stay back with her. The following weekend, she expressed a desire to go shopping for her friend's son's wedding and wanted us to accompany her. We agreed, turning our usual date night into a shopping trip. The next week, I felt a bit dizzy from the heavy workload at my job. My mother-in-law noticed and told my husband to stay home to look after me. I appreciated her concern, but it started to feel like our date nights were being sidelined. For nearly 2 months, various reasons kept coming up, preventing us from going out on our date nights. Whether it was her health, errands, or other concerns, our Saturday evenings were consistently occupied. I found it disheartening, as those moments alone with my husband were precious to me. One week, she offered to cook for us, suggesting we stay in. I decided it was time to speak up. I firmly told her that we hadn't been out on a date in a long time and I wanted to go out with my husband that evening. She didn't object, but her smile was strained. I saw how her eyes stayed on us until we got in the car and left. She was not at all happy. We enjoyed our night out, but upon returning home very late, we found my Mill waiting by the door. She said she was worried about us and added that us staying out late made her very restless. She felt like she'd lose us. I saw how this affected my husband. It made him very sad. It was no surprise when he suggested we should avoid going out in the evenings and plan our dates in the morning instead. This change was difficult for me. Our date nights were more than just time away from home. They were about maintaining a special connection in our relationship. Shifting to morning dates didn't feel the same. But I didn't want to trouble my Mill either. We were still spending time together, so that timing was no big deal for me. We adapted by finding new entertaining date options. Morning brunches, afternoon outings, and midweek lunch dates became our new routine. It kept the peace in our household, and we realized that we were going on dates more frequently. I only had my Mill to thank. So, that weekend, my husband planned to go out with his friends on a camping trip. The boys had been planning for a long time. I and Mill gave him a hearty send-off and came back to watch some Netflix. She made potato wedges and dessert, while I bought some rose wine that she liked. Everything was going great until she said that I hardly do anything around the house. It was so random, I didn't understand if she was talking about the show or me. When I asked, she said that she was talking to me and started saying how the house was always dusty and she couldn't clean everything, cook and also take care of her personal work. She needs some help from me as well. I felt very guilty. I told her I would start helping from now on and she should rest. So, I dusted the house, helped her clean the dishes, took the clothes out for dry cleaning, emptied the trash cans and also helped her in cooking. While we were making lasagna for the two of us, she laughed and asked if I never learned cooking. I smiled and said that I didn't. She commented that cooking is the basic thing I must have learned before marrying her son. She asked if I will leave him starving if something were to happen to her. I was shocked. Though she made it sound like a joke, her eyes were hard and angry. I didn't reply and kept quiet. That night, I enrolled in a cooking class to learn the techniques. My husband came back and things between me and my meal went back to how they were before. One evening, I was joking around with my husband and he dropped his pen on the floor. I slowly nudged it with my leg and asked him to pick it up. He smiled and picked it up. My meal saw this. When we were alone, she said that I should move my body sometimes, at least otherwise I'd be at risk of obesity. It's good to move one's body a few times a day if I am not capable of doing it the way everyone else does. I had always been a chubby kid, a hefty woman now, and her statement felt like an insult. She asked me not to make her son feel inferior again. That last part? She did not even bother to make it sound like a joke or even a friendly conversation. It sounded more like a threat. I apologized to her and said that we were just joking and I did not intend to make my husband feel inferior. That's not what I had in mind. She asked me to forget about it. Her taunts and insults became more frequent. I'd be talking on the phone with my friends and she'd come and say that I hung out with very bad company. Those girls are true evil, she once said. I asked her not to say such things because my girls are special to me. They'd been with me when I needed them. She said I should stop having friends because I didn't know how to choose the right ones. Then the taunts were about the way I dressed. The sleeves are too small, the shorts are too high, the earrings are too big, the heels are unnecessary. She started controlling my life and I kept quiet for my husband's sake. I made a cake for her birthday and threw it in the trash bin. I saw her do it. When my husband came into the kitchen, she said that the cake was what she made and she didn't like the way it turned out. I wanted to cry but kept mum. I didn't want to be a spoil during a happy occasion. It was getting really hard to stay with her, but I never said anything to my husband. It was a Sunday and we just came back from church. She was putting this plate of chicken for baking in the oven. When I came there to fetch myself a glass of water, she said that I was not praying the right way in the church. I asked her to tell me what was wrong with my praying. She said it was the way I was leaning in front of the Lord, how I was speaking to the priest and not taking the holy water from him the right way. I didn't know there was a right way of doing these things. I was being sincere. But she said, if only my mother taught me things properly, her troubles would have been less. My mother should be the one to blame. She raised a very bad daughter. She didn't stop at that. She said that's how a broken family would be. A dad who never showed up and a mother who didn't do her part. She said she was thankful that despite not being married, she gave her son the right manners and morals. I didn't shout, but I got threateningly close to her and said, the next time she says anything about my parents, I'll not keep quiet. I respect her for being a single mom and never questioned her upbringing ways, so she shouldn't talk about my mom's. She did not say a word. She smacked the plate of chicken to the floor and began crying. My husband ran into the kitchen and she told him that I took the plate from her hand and threw it to the floor because she added garlic powder to the recipe. It sounded so silly even to me. My husband just looked at me like I lost my mind. He asked what made me so angry. I told him she threw the plate and I did not. The blame game began and he asked us both to go to our rooms and not say another word. The tension between my mother-in-law and me reached its breaking point one evening when she blamed me for something I didn't do. It was a trivial matter, but her harsh words and accusatory tone were the last straw for me. I stopped talking to her entirely. From that moment on, I made a conscious effort to avoid being in the same place at the same time as her. Our home became a battleground of avoidance. I started cooking for myself and refused to eat the food she prepared. When she and my husband spent time together, I made sure to be elsewhere, whether it was in another room or out of the house. My mother-in-law seemed pleased with this arrangement, her satisfaction evident in the way she interacted with my husband when I wasn't around. My husband soon noticed my behavior. One evening, he confronted me, asking why I was distancing myself from his mother and him. It was a difficult conversation, but I finally told him everything. I recounted all the taunts and the constant blaming, the way she undermined me at every turn. His reaction was not what I had hoped for. He didn't believe me. He insisted that I must have misunderstood his mother because she was never that rude. He told me she liked me, and it hurt to see how blind he was to her true nature. I told him he was being biased. His response was to suggest I try harder to adjust, to make an effort to get along. But I had reached my limit. There was only so much I could do, and I could not continue to endure the insults and wrongful accusations. The strain between my mother-in-law and me began to affect my relationship with my husband. Our once cherished Saturday date nights became a thing of the past. We stopped talking about our days, and we ceased meeting with our mutual friends to avoid the uncomfortable discussions about our problems at home. I realized that to save my marriage, I needed to show my husband his mother's true colors. I understood that he had known her for years and loved her deeply, so it was only fair that he had doubts about my complaints. I didn't expect him to believe me instantly, but I needed him to see the reality of the situation. I chose a day carefully. I knew my husband would be home, And I made sure to spend time in common areas of the house, places where my mother-in-law would usually find me. She didn't know her son was home. He took a leave of absence and none of us bothered to tell her. True to form, she couldn't resist making snide remarks and giving me disappointed looks whenever we crossed paths. Then she complained about the way I did things around the house, blamed me for minor inconveniences, and made cutting comments about my character and capabilities. It was so loud that my husband heard these things all the way to his room. When she finally realized her son was home, she was a little startled. But seeing how he said nothing about her behavior, she went on insulting me. At first, he tried to stay out of it for whatever reason, but as the day wore on, I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes. He had never seen his mother behave this way. I realized he was keeping quiet so as to not hurt either of us and make the whole issue even bigger. He was clearly not happy about it though. The final straw came during dinner. I sat with them, breaking my usual pattern of avoidance. My mother-in-law, visibly annoyed by my presence, started criticizing the way I set the table and served the food. She accused me of trying to make her look bad and not respecting her in her own home. My husband sat silently, his face growing pale as he listened to her insults. She said that I gave her less food because I wanted her to starve. Honestly, I served all of us an equal amount of food. She started saying that I broke her pot in the garden and did not bother to apologize. I told her that I did not break it and she got so angry that she spilled an entire glass of water on my face. She was very brave that her son was not saying anything so she'd get away with it. But my husband immediately came to my rescue and embraced me. It was the first time I heard him scream at his mother. He told her to not disrespect me and there was no reason for her to throw the glass of water. It was just a pot and if it was so important he'd buy her a new one. I didn't know why I started crying but I did. Maybe, because I did not expect him to support me even then but he did. After he consoled me and took me back to my room, my husband confronted his mother. I could hear from my room what they were talking. He asked her why she was treating me this way and why she had been so harsh. Her response was defensive and dismissive, but it was enough. He finally saw what I had been enduring. He asked her to be honest and tell him what the problem was. She said that I was trying to keep her away from her son with my stupid dates, friends gatherings and whatnot. She said that the marriage is only making her son more wife-centered and it makes her feel very left out. It's all my fault and I am doing these things intentionally to hurt her, to make her look like a bad person. My husband got really angry that she was still not coming to terms with her behavior. She was not ready to accept that she was wrong. She kept saying that whatever she did was for her son and she'd not regret it. Now, my husband wants to move out. It has been 2 weeks since this happened and they fight with each other every day. And the more they fight, the more she taunts and insults me. I don't know what to do. Should we move out so that my husband can sleep at night in peace? Should we abandon his mother? If we move out, will she blame me that I snatched her son away from her? Should I even bother about her blaming me or what she thinks? I also see that my husband is very sad about his mom's behavior. Should I make peace with the situation for his sake or move out? There are so many questions and hardly any answers. If any of you can advise me, I'd be very grateful. Looking forward to your responses. Thanks in advance. Update 1. Hello, everyone. First and foremost, I am very thankful for your suggestions. Thank you so much for being considerate of my situation and thinking from all perspectives while giving me your suggestions. I am here to update you about the situation. My husband stayed true to his promise and moved out. I tried to tell him not to do it. Some of you suggested that I must communicate with my mill that I don't plan to take her son away from her. So, that's what I did. I sat her down and told her how I am planning to build a family together and just because I take her son out for some quality time together, that doesn't mean I am taking him away from her. She listened to all of it patiently but in the end, she just told me that I was turning things in my favor and trying to be a goodie. She screamed at me that I was doing anyone a favor by having this conversation with her. After my attempt failed, my husband decided that he would always be there for his mother when she needed him, financially or emotionally, but physically, he won't be staying with her any longer. It's been almost a month since we moved out and we've settled into our new routine. My mill calls often to check on her son, also begging him to come back. But, she doesn't mention me or tell him that he should get me back too. It's like, in her head, she has completely cut me off from the family. My husband understands that my father gave me away during the wedding and he won't turn back to look at me again. That's how it has always been. So, he's all I have. He wants to be there for me. But, he also misses his mother. More than anything, he misses the person his mother was. She did visit us once at our new place. She spoke to her son, brought him some food, spent time with him and left. She didn't speak to me, ask me about my well-being or even look at me. I retired to my room and let them be. But, my husband told me that he doesn't like how I am being excluded in my own house and asked her to not visit again. He said he'd go visit her but she needn't come. She blamed that on me too. I don't know how things got so bad. Now, my husband is questioning his judgments and blaming himself for everything. He hardly had anything to do with how things turned out. But, a day won't go by without him thinking that maybe his decisions have led to more fights in the family. I told him that's not the case, but I still see the pain. My Mill makes it very hard for him. Whenever he visits, he tells me that she keeps complaining about me. It's more about proving me wrong than spending time with her son. Now, my husband doesn't want to visit her because it's become very difficult to handle her negativity. I am considering family counseling for the three of us. There would be another person who could tell us what is going wrong or help us figure out a way to stay together. What do you think? Should I do it or let things stay the way they are? Update 2. Another update for all those lovely people who sent warm and loving messages to me. Your suggestions have not gone unnoticed. So, we decided to go with counseling. My Mill was difficult at first, but my husband threatened her that if she didn't consider it, then he'd never step into her house. Not even when she needs him. He was bluffing. He'd never do that. But Mill agreed and sat down for the first few sessions. It was great. The psychologist was able to help us with our issues. It went on for more than 3 months. You can see why I didn't leave an update sooner. My Mill began talking with me again, though it was only 1 or 2 words per day. We went shopping like two strangers who were just walking together but not really spending the day together. My husband wanted us to do it and both of us did it just for the sake of it. Also, there is something much more important. I'm pregnant. My husband knows it, but we've never told my Mill yet. We didn't expect it. We thought we were being careful, but when God decides to give you a gift, He can surprise you whenever He wants, right? We are still fighting, but I am hoping that she'll take the pregnancy news well. Update 3. I can't thank the universe enough. We told my Mill about the pregnancy last night and she was very happy. I took the first step and went to embrace her. I hugged her and told her if I had a son, I'd never want my future Dill to take him away from me. I didn't even bring him into this world yet, and I feel a strong sense of possessiveness. Boy or girl, I would love them immensely. I told her the same thing. When I wouldn't want anyone taking my child from me, why would I do that to another mother? I tried to explain to her clearly. She broke down. I thought I must have said something wrong, but she hugged me and apologized. She said that all good things in her life were snatched away from her and she thought that my love for her son would overshadow her presence in his life. She thought he'd forget her. She had no one else. I understood where she came from. So did my husband. We consoled her and told her how much we loved her. I told her she was my mother too. She's the only mother I have now, like it or not, so I am not letting her go. It was very emotional, but we are now back again as a family. My husband and I just decided that we will be moving back to my Mill again. We are happy. My husband is overjoyed. A child on the way and mother back to being his, well, mother. We are so happy. Thank you everyone. Thanks for your prayers. Update 4. Quick and short update. We are still going strong. Almost a year it had been since my last update, and there had been no fights or arguments. We do quarrel sometimes, but nothing too big that we'd hurt each other. This feels so good. Also, I have a daughter. She is a doll. My doll. Being a mother has become so much easier, thanks to my Mill's support. She loves her granddaughter and we are going to get her baptized soon. It is a happy family, people. Thank you and stay blessed.